Hi friends, today we're going to keep talking about adjectives. Okay, so specifically kind of using adjectives and comparing them with ER and EST, which is also one of our phonics focuses. So remember that adjectives are words that describe. So think about adjectives are colors, amounts, things like that, anything to do with our senses. So taste, feel, sight, hearing, those kinds of things. So for example, we have this elephant. He is a gray elephant. So the adjective gray, so the color he is. He's a large elephant. So large is the adjective there. And then he is a friendly elephant. So of course, what is he? He is friendly. That describes him. So let's specifically talk about adjectives with the suffixes ER and EST because that goes along with our phonics focus. So if you add ER to adjectives, you're using that to compare two people, animals, places, or things, right? So we've talked about ER and EST before. And remember, you're using ER if it's just two things you're comparing in between. You add EST to compare more than two people, places, animals, or things. Okay, so it can be anything more than two. So you're going to use that EST. So, for example, in this sentence, they gave us my kite is high. There's just one, you're not comparing it with anything. So high is just the adjective there without any endings. Then it says your kite is higher than my kite. They're comparing your kite and my kite. That's two things that they're comparing. So they've added that ER to make it higher. Okay? And then lastly, it says his kite is highest of all. Now, of all implies more than two, so they've added that EST, right? We don't know how many is in that whole group, but of all the kites, his is the highest. Okay? So let's look at a few example sentences, and then we're going to work together to create a thinking map as well. So this says this string is blank, then that string. If I'm comparing this string and that string, that's two things that I'm comparing. So I'm going to use the ER, and I'm going to say longer. This string is longer than that string. Okay? The next sentence, we're going to use the same adjective. It says this is the blank string of all. Again, that of all implies like a whole group, more than two of all the kites that are flying. So I'm going to use that EST. So it's going to be longest. So comparing more than two. Okay. Lem has the blank kite in the sky. It's going to be faster or fastest. Well, since it's of all the kites that are in the sky, we don't know how many there are, but there's probably more than two. It's of the group, so we're going to say EST. So fastest. He has the fastest kite in the sky, so the whole group. Jeff thinks his kite is blank than her kite. Jeff thinks his kite is blank than her kite. Well, it's comparing between two things, between Jeff's kite and whoever her kite is, right? So two things we're comparing, so it's just going to be ER, stronger. Jeff thinks his kite is stronger than her kite. All right, and then the last sentence is my kite is the blank of all six kites. Well, of all six kites, that's definitely more than two, so we're going to say that EST for strongest. Okay, so that's the biggest thing when adding these endings is if it's two, you're just going to add the ER, right? So like we talked about even last week when we were doing our sounds, how most of those words that had at the end were comparing between two things, like bigger or thinner. And then the EST is if you have more than two or of the whole group, right? Okay, so your thinking question is how many people, animals, places, or things, so those are our nouns, how many nouns are being compared? That's your biggest clue. Okay, so now you need to get a piece of paper to work along with me. We're going to make a tree map, which I've already started for us today, and it's labeled our title, because remember it's always important to have that title, is the using adjectives. Okay, and our first branch is going to be the base word. Remember the base word is, or root word, is the word before any ending or prefix has been added. You have ER in the middle and EST as our last branch. Okay, so all I want you to worry about up to this point is just this word, right? Hard. So if that's our base word, hard, it's our adjective. When we add the ER to it, nothing gets doubled or anything. You just add the ER. It becomes harder. And that would be comparing two objects. So if you were comparing two objects, A pencil is harder than an eraser, right? Something like that. Comparing two items. Just so it's a little easier for me to write. And then EST would be as if you had more than two, and it would be the hardest. It could be like the diamond is the hardest of all the gems. Hardest has an EST. Okay, something I want you to notice about our next base word here, thin, is that we have the little asterisk here because that means I want you to watch how the spelling changes. Remember when we have a consonant, vowel, consonant at the end, we're going to double before we add that ending like we did before. So you have thin, and then you're going to double that consonant there, that N, before we add that ER. Again, ER means we are comparing two things. So you could say pen is thinner than a marker, right? And remember, we doubled that consonant because if it wasn't doubled, that sneaky E would be controlling that vowel. And that's not what we want to do in this word. All right, and then if you add the EST, it's going to be the same thing. Okay? All right, so just moving right along, we're going to go through for deep. You have deeper, and then deepest. There's no spelling change on this one because it ends with a vowel consonant, so it doesn't follow that same rule. Wet does, though. We have that consonant, vowel, consonant, so we are going to have to double that T before we add the ER to make it wetter. Wetter. Or wettest. Alright, quick, same thing. It does not have that spelling change because it ends with vowel, consonant, consonant. So you're just going to add that ER ending or the EST ending. Alright, and then finally, hot does have that consonant, vowel, consonant, so you are going to double that T, add the ER, and then add the double T before the EST. Okay, just give you there a second. You can pause it if you need to catch up. Once you've got all this down, I want you to flip over your paper, and on the back, we're going to really do a real quick bridge map as well, because I want us to think about the different endings. And so these endings, ER and EST, are comparative adjectives. So these adjectives compare. Now remember, when you compare something, like when we compare and contrast with our double bubble, comparing is how they're, the same or how they're different, those kinds of things, like comparing and contrasting. So it's that kind of adjective. So for our bridge map, I want you to have ER on one side and EST on the other. What I want you to say is ER is to only two, and think of it like the word more, where ER is three or more, and think of it as the word most. Okay, so just another little guide for you to help kind of keep track, and that will help with your phonics as well, that ER versus that EST. Okay, all right, friends, that's all I have for you today. So work hard as you always do, and have a great rest of your day.